And welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we are so glad to have you here. Today we are at the State House in Trenton, where there is a lot of activity, both in the Assembly and in the Senate. We're going to be speaking with lawmakers from both houses and both sides of the aisle on the issues affecting those living here in New Jersey. Coming up today, we're talking about New Jersey's Transportation Trust Fund. The legislation steered its way through both the Senate and Assembly. Before the votes, though, the State House was filled with those who support the bill that raises the state's gas tax and creates a new registration fee for electric vehicles. The Transportation Trust Fund pays for road projects as well as New Jersey Transit's capital needs. Tom Bracken is president and CEO of the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. Tom Bracken, the last time I saw you, we were here following the governor's budget address. A lot of people in the business community, yourself included, very concerned about the governor's proposed tax on commuters, putting that onto the backs of businesses. But today is about the Transportation Trust Fund. So can you tell me a little bit about it and where you stand?
Well, the Transportation Trust Fund expires in June, and it's the way we fund our infrastructure, keep it healthy, make it competitive, make it efficient. And by having it expire in June, if we don't pass this legislation, we have no funding source to continue to provide funds to, again, improve and maintain the infrastructure. The infrastructure is the foundation of our economy. It is so vital to the entire state. And it's the one part of the state, by the way, that every citizen and every business touches every single day. So we have to keep it safe, we have to keep it efficient, and we need a funding mechanism to do that that's reliable. And this plan that's being proposed today is not only an efficient funding mechanism, but it's reliable because it's a 5-year fund that'll be constitutionally dedicated with a 1.9 cent tax per gallon increase, which, by the way, is going to cost the average motorist in New Jersey $16 a year, 30 cents a week. So we have a plan that's efficient, it's affordable, it's proven, it's going to be a dedicated funding source. We need to do this. If it lapses, like it did in 2016, the last time we renewed this, we had a significant downturn in the economy, people lost their jobs, projects got delayed. We cannot afford that. We cannot let that happen again. We just cannot. So today's vote will be to renew the Transportation Trust Fund with the bill that's being proposed and was proposed in the legislature by the governor's office. We think it's a great bill, and there's some opposition to it, but the opposition's plans really would delay the implementation of this because it would take a long time, I think, for any of the alternative plans to take effect. So again, affordable plan, it results in a safe infrastructure, results in an efficient infrastructure, and it's something we really have to do.
It's one of those things that people don't always think about, but it's something you do every day. You take roads, right, bridges, your transportation, people getting to work, getting to school, what have you. Yet, every few years we find ourselves here, and it seems to be controversial. But why is that? What is the opposition? What are people upset about? Is it all financial?
It's the word tax. We are an overtaxed state. I'm very aware of that. I'm not for any taxes, but sometimes there's a tax that makes sense. And in this case, it does make sense because the users are going to pay for the roads, which makes sense. Also, don't forget that 30% of all gas purchased in New Jersey is from out-of-staters. So we have a significant portion of this being paid by out-of-state people. So add up all that and take the tax out of that and just understand that it's $16 a year. $16 a year is $16 a year, I realize, but it's not something that's going to be dramatic like it was last time at 23 cents. So tax is probably the one deterrent that people look at this as to why not to do it. But if you look at the tax in its entirety, in its context, at 30 cents a week, no-brainer.
What are your members saying about this, and also in context of the bigger picture? Like I mentioned the last time you and I talked, the governor had proposed a new tax for New Jersey Transit, which people need to get to and from work. New Jersey Transit needs to be fixed, but he's proposing let's put this on the backs of the bigger, wealthier corporations. So can you give us that context?
Well, first of all, this is not a new tax. The tax is already in existence, and we already pay gas tax. So it's just an extension of what we have in a very minor extension. So the other tax that's being proposed that we were against is a brand new tax that's going to dramatically hurt the future economy of New Jersey. The big difference between this tax, the 1.9 cents, and the tax the governor proposed with the corporate transit fee is the corporate transit fee is going to hurt our economy. This tax is going to help our economy. Big difference. It's opposite ends of the spectrum. And again, I'm not for any new taxes or any addition to in a tax structure that's already there. But in some cases it makes sense, and this is one case where it does.
Any other thoughts on today's legislative session? Anything else percolating that you want to talk about?
That's the big one today for me. There's a lot of stuff going on coming up. The budget is coming up. That's going to be a real battle because the budget that we have that's been proposed is probably the worst budget for business I have seen in my career. We have to do something about promoting our economy because we're about to hit a fiscal cliff, and if we don't do something soon, we're going to have a big problem.
And the other thing that we had talked about previously is the steps that businesses had taken forward, the steps that the state had taken to help businesses to go 2 steps forward, and you felt that sometimes you feel like you're going 3 steps backwards.
Well, we had momentum. We had the CNBC poll, we went from 42nd to 19th. We have 7 bond rating increases. We had some legislation passed last year that was pro-business. So we had a lot of good momentum when we were building on that. And now all of a sudden with the corporate transit fee and the bucket truck tax and a few other things, the rug got pulled out from under. So a few steps backwards, but we still have, I still have optimism that we can make things happen. It's just going to be harder.
Tom Bracken, thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
Mike Hellstrom is Vice President and the Eastern Regional Manager of the Laborers International Union of North America. So Mike, one of the items topping the agenda today is Transportation Trust Fund. It's something that needs to be renewed. Tell me why you're here and why you brought so many of your members here today to the legislature.
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's essentially important to the economy overall in New Jersey that we have a superior infrastructure system, and the people behind me are the ones that build and maintain the infrastructure here in the state of New Jersey. So not just only our middle class lifestyles and families and wages and benefits on the line, but a superior infrastructure is also on the line. It's time to refund the Transportation Trust Fund.
Back in 2016, it was not renewed. Can you tell us about the impact that it had on the members who you represent?
Sure. So if I remember correctly, because we had no funding, actually all the infrastructure work stopped for about 9 months worth of time. And it's hard to start a system and stop a system and restart it and have those false starts. So we have to have a continued funding mechanism for the Transportation Trust Fund and not have the mechanisms of yesterday where we were hocus pocus, like fake funding the Transportation Trust Fund, but actually funding the fund with real dollars so that we can have a real system that we're building and expanding upon here in the state of New Jersey.
For those people who say, hey, we're already so overtaxed, we don't want to hear about another tax, can you talk to us about why this is, or why you say that this is a good investment, and if it isn't passed, how it could negatively impact not just your workers, but the people in New Jersey?
Sure. So every mom, every dad, every firefighter, every first responder uses the infrastructure here in the state of New Jersey. For commerce, the amount of commerce and the billions of dollars that are on the line for the economy overall here in the state of New Jersey, while people may say, hey, we don't want to pay a little bit more in gas tax, without a funding mechanism, our infrastructure will continue to crumble and be in disrepair, and New Jersey will find itself out of place in the Northeast here and really in the epicenter of the economy of the United States of America.
What do you say to the critics who are pushing back, saying, well, we don't need another tax, we need to find another way to fund this?
Well, we're open to additional solutions, but this is not the time to have that debate. We should refund the Transportation Trust Fund today and figure out what the future is tomorrow.
And well, that is, also, looking long term. Today's solution, would it be a temporary, is it a 4-year solution? What can you
my understanding, it's a 5-year plan. It's just under 10 cents over the next 5 years, 1.9 cents per year. And it's based on consumption, so whether we use more or less, it can balance itself out. And in the next 5 years, as we start the conversion into what additional automobiles will look like, or gas-powered or electric, we can have a bigger conversation with the legislature about how do we continue to fund this program for the future.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would urge every single legislator in the state of New Jersey not to make this a partisan issue, because infrastructure is not partisan. It's the biggest nonpartisan issue that's facing the state, and they should vote for a superior infrastructure system today.
Senator, when you walk into the State House, you can't help but see so many groups, unions here. People are concerned about the Transportation Trust Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about what is planned for today, what you hope to accomplish?
One of the first things I learned when I walked into the State House 22 years ago was one of the fundamental responsibilities as legislators is to fund education and to invest in our infrastructure, our transportation trust fund. And that, a couple of years ago, we made it a constitutionally dedicated transportation trust fund. So every dollar that goes into that fund can only be used for capital improvements, not just at the state level, but also for the municipal and county level as well, which is a property tax relief to pave roads and fix roads. So that fund is running dry, and we have a goal and an objective to replenish the fund for the next 5 years.
People get concerned when they hear about a tax. So can you tell us how you plan to address this with minimal impact on the taxpayers?
So I hate to use the word tax. It's a user fee. When you pull up to fill up at the tank, it's 1.9 pennies per year for 5 years. That's what the impact would be from this. But we also have to make sure that those who are driving electric vehicles pay their fair share. Because right now there is no fees, there's no sales tax. So there is a fee in here for those who are driving these more expensive electric vehicles. There is an annual fee per year for the electrical vehicles. Nobody wants to have to be able to call it a user fee or ask people to pay more. But we have, in order to keep our economy going and flowing and put all the men and women who work in our building trades to work and keep this economy going, keep our businesses thriving, we need to invest in our infrastructure.
And it would apply to people who use New Jersey, those traveling through, those not even living in New Jersey would be contributing to it.
Sure. So there's calculations that say sometimes the traffic on the Jersey Turnpike, 50% of that could be out-of-state motorists and larger trucks who are transporting goods and services up and down the East Coast.
The vote passed both houses largely along party lines. Republicans, however, voiced their opposition. Another big topic today that's going to be discussed is Transportation Trust Fund. You know, we had the governor's budget just last month talking about when it comes to New Jersey Transit, taxing businesses. But this is separate. This is dealing with the entire state, the state's infrastructure, the Transportation Trust Fund, but it does involve the T word, tax. So can you tell me a little bit about where you stand?
Well, look, we are obviously opposed to increasing the gas tax, especially since the Republican caucus put out its own legislation that showed that we can fully fund the Transportation Trust Fund over a longer period of time with more money without increasing the gas tax. Why put an additional burden on the backs of our taxpayers when we can do this without it? And our legislation has proven that. The Office of Legislative Services has delivered the numbers. It shows that. And quite frankly, what the governor's legislation does and the bill that we're going to see today is really support New Jersey Transit. And listen, this money is supposed to be for roads and bridges so that our residents can have a safe commute. We got to wean New Jersey Transit off its requirement that they have to have their hands in this till. That's not what it was made for. So I think our proposal would not only have that Transportation Trust Fund for a longer period of time, but would also fund it more. And we have a separate bill that would require an independent audit of New Jersey Transit so we can slowly but surely wean them off their demand for this money.
Can you tell me how Republicans would do this without a gas tax?
Sure. We would incorporate some of the governor's proposal, especially charging a fee for the EVs on registration. They need to pay their fair share, no question about it. But we'd use some of the debt defeasance money, which is better off being spent to lower the tax than to pay off some old debt that we're paying a very low interest rate on, right? So it would be a bigger savings for the administration. We'd also use a bit of the surplus, the state surplus. We have a big surplus, and the governor is going to carry a lot of that over. We feel that money would be better used over the long term. We can address this project for 8 years, and we propose using a little bit of that money to do that.
Why do you think the Democrats just are going to gas tax?
because that's their knee-jerk reaction, unfortunately. You know, when they see a problem, they just immediately say, well, we'll raise the tax, we'll find the revenue. And that goes back to the fact that, you know, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. So instead of addressing the revenue, they just want to increase the taxes, which make it more burdensome for our residents, and it's not the right way to go. And we've proven that again today. If the Republicans would have had a seat at the table to discuss this with the administration, we wouldn't be sitting here today. We'd have a bipartisan approach that didn't put this tax on the backs of our taxpayers.
And that's what I keep hearing from Republicans, is how they don't have a seat at the table. The Democrats control the Senate, the Assembly, the governor's office, which has happened in state history before, but why can't Republicans get some type of a voice heard at the table?
Well, we're trying, but, you know, when they have the numbers that they have, it's very difficult. They don't need our votes. So when they come up with a solution, they don't need our votes. Unless some of their members peel off and they have to come to us, then they don't. It's unfortunate. That's why the front office, the governor's seat, is so important. And to have the other party in that governor's seat when one party controls both houses is so important for the checks and balances.
There's another tax that's being talked about today, and that is a tax to help fund the Transportation Trust Fund.
Well, that's interesting because they cut aid to 150 school districts. Isn't that a crisis where they're cutting music, art, and gym and certain sports? But here they're saying, well, let's get some more money from a gas tax. And this is a tax where they've done nothing else to help the citizens. For example, when we did this in the past, we got rid of the estate tax. We cut the sales tax. Those are the kind of compromises you need when you have a balanced government. This is one party out of control.
What would Republicans do as opposed to this gas tax, and also taxing electric vehicles as well, because they use the roads? What would Republicans say, here's our plan, here's our alternative?
I love that question because it's not a one-year question. Last year, they spent over $1 billion in special projects in individual districts of certain legislators. How about not spending $1 billion on special projects, bring that money here and give it either to transit or to the roads? So I don't want to hear, what are you going to do now? You mean after you spend all that money, somebody comes and goes, what are you going to do now? I don't have any money. I go like this, you probably shouldn't have spent the money last year.
And you're getting into budget season where you're going to be talking not just about the Transportation Trust Fund, but also the commuter tax that is being pushed onto, or proposed to being pushed onto businesses, the larger businesses in the state of New Jersey.
So there's another issue. So now they're going back to the business community that's been under siege in New Jersey because they spent so much money the last 2 or 3 years. You know, if your child comes to you and says, hey, Mommy, Daddy, I don't have any money. Well, we gave you your allowance and you spent it last week. Okay, well, I want more money. You go like this. You should have saved some money last week and then you wouldn't come to Mommy and Daddy. So I don't want to hear, what am I going to do now? I'm going to hope they don't do the same thing over again in the future.
So both houses are talking about the Transportation Trust Fund, and nobody doubts that it needs to be funded. It's a matter of how do you fund it. Sure. Democrats say, well, we've got a gas tax that would actually not be too bad, and it would also hold those with electric vehicles. They would be paying their fair share, but you have some concerns.
Well, I mean, listen, I said in committee, we have a fund that's not necessarily in bad shape. The trust fund is an extremely important piece of banking that the state needs to have. But here we are, with a fund that's not necessarily struggling. We're adding electric vehicles on top of what we've been able to collect so far on a fund that they're telling us is okay. We've just finished 2 years of a budget surplus. And now we're telling the people in the middle of an inflation crisis where we're paying $4 a gallon for milk that we need now more money for gas. We don't need any more money. We have the money to fund TTF, probably higher than the levels that they are trying to get it funded at. So I want to have that conversation. We have an alternative bill with people in the chamber, in both chambers, and we want to have that conversation. But we're not being permitted that conversation, and I think that that's bad government.
Why do you think that is?
Well, listen, I can go into conjecture all day long and try and figure out why that is. The truth is, I don't know why that is. And to be very honest with you, there's no justification for it to be the way it is. So all I want is the opportunity to sit with the parties that are involved here and really sort of hammer down a deal that not only gets TTF where it needs to be, which I've said numerous times, TTF is crucial to what New Jersey is, but do it in a way that doesn't continue to hurt everybody. So apparently the powers that be don't want to have that conversation.
The governor's office has defended the legislation, saying a tax of less than 2 cents per gallon for 5 years is more affordable than an immediate double-digit hike. Once it's signed, the legislation would go into effect on July 1st. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is it's been tabled for now, is that Oprah legislation. It got some journalists concerned. It got people in the special education community concerned. Are you comfortable talking about what's going on with the Oprah legislation, Open Public Records Act?
Sure. So we did criminal justice reform 8 years ago, and here we are 8 years later. We already brought the entire commission back to look at what's working and what's not working. We've made amendments to criminal justice reform, and we're going to make additional amendments to criminal justice reform. Oprah has not been touched in over 20 years. And the objective here is to modernize it, to stop people from making money off the taxpayers, profiteering off the taxpayers, and 3, to protect the privacy of some innocent individuals who have filed for a dog license. Or son or daughter signs up for recreation. So there is a lot of rumors out there. The press has nothing to be worried about. Nothing will stop them from getting the information that they deserve and need. I've made it clear, if we don't get this done by the first week of April, I gave it a great shot, and we'll probably table it for another 20 years. I think the right thing to do is we're going to make amendments, and hopefully we're not going to move forward until we answer every question possible.
Well, and that's one of the issues that people don't realize, the time and effort that there are departments within the state that have full-time people and all they're doing is fulfilling the OPRA, the Open Public Records request.
Millions of dollars are probably spent, I'm assuming, around the state of New Jersey just answering these OPRA requests and the hours that are spent answering requests. We have a responsibility to answer legitimate OPRA requests. Some of them are just frivolous, unfortunately.
And then final thoughts just about the special education community. I have children who are in the special ed community. I know people are concerned that there could be a ripple effect, an unintended consequence. So can you talk about how you're looking at that and trying to ensure that...
Looking at that, we're reassuring them they're not impacted at all. If you are a parent of a special education student, you have full access to every decision made by that local school district. I am a big supporter of our special education. We do it better than any other state in New Jersey, and I never, ever would. I believe parents have every right to know what's happening with their student and decisions being made about their students. So I want to reassure everybody, special education, getting access to those records is not being prohibited under this bill.
One of the pieces of legislation that's tabled for now that you had a lot of concerns about has to do with the Open Public Records Act. Can you tell us a little bit about why this kind of came to the forefront? It has a lot of reporters certainly concerned, but also some other groups like the special education community concerned about being able to access information if their kids are in a group home. Can you talk a little bit about that in an overview?
Sure. So, the bill in its current form, and it's going to be heavily amended, raised an enormous number of concerns. Some of the groups you talked about and many more. We had a multiple-hour hearing on it, and quite frankly, 90% of the testimony that we heard was expressing these concerns that this bill, as it currently sits, would reduce the public's ability to get access to records that they have paid for. These are public records, that it was going to make it harder. And so I was very glad to see that we tapped the brakes, so to speak, on this bill, and that we've gone back to the table to talk with all the advocates, because it's also true that the Oprah law has not been amended or modernized in 22 years. So this is, of course, it is time. We live in a much different world, but we want to make sure that we get it right.
So there's reason to look at it, but the things that were being looked at, what happened? Touched quite a few nerves
It touched a lot of nerves. It started excluding things from Oprah that many people want access to. And so, that's not what we're trying to do here. Do we see a rise of people using this for their commercial reasons? Yes, we do. Can we do things to try to tamp that down? Nobody likes, if you get a dog license is a common example, and next thing you know, all the electric dog fence companies now know this and are sending you email or knocking on your door. That's not what this law was meant for. It was meant to make sure the public had access to the records that are important to the public, and that includes the press. And so that's what we've got to do now is how do we modernize? How do we digitize, right? This law was written before you could just easily digitize all these documents. And think about it, if we start digitizing public documents, then we can also reduce the burden on the custodians of these documents itself. And so there's a lot we need to do and a lot we need to look at.
And I think that that's where the public didn't hear a lot about how they were commercializing it. So were there other examples of that? That's extraordinary. A dog fence company can go get an Oprah request and find out everybody who owns a dog and then target them. That's incredible.
Sure. I mean, a similar sort of thing, you see this around if someone gets a speeding ticket or a parking ticket. Next thing you know, your mailbox is flooded with lawyers who want to defend you in court. You didn't ask for that to happen. You didn't ask for that record to be released. That's just an invasion of privacy. So how do we balance that invasion of privacy with the right for the public to get access to the records that they paid for in the first place?
And that will do it for today from Trenton, New Jersey. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.